In Tipperary lies Dundrum, a small village of just 200 people. For years, Dundrum House Hotel was the lifeblood of this community, a hub for tourism, jobs, and local pride. But in 2022, the hotel began housing 277 Ukrainian refugees, and now plans to transform it into a permanent International Protection Accommodation Services, or IPAS, center have sparked a fierce debate. The village is united, and a protest at the hotel gates has stretched on for months. Today, we hear from one local about the impact on their community and the fight to reclaim their hotel.
Hi Fiona, you're a concerned local here in Dundrum.
Yeah, I am. Look, I live just out the road. I live here in Dundrum, and when we got the word that this was happening, there was huge concern. Primarily, in the first instance, it was the permanent loss of the hotel to the village. There was no problem whatsoever with the temporary accommodation provided to the Ukrainians, but that was always supposed to be a temporary arrangement.
On condition, yeah, it was there for.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that the operator in there at the moment, when he first came on board here, he lauded plans in the media and everything about redeveloping the whole complex in there. I think he was trying to bring it to be almost like the Mount Juliet of Munster. There was going to be talk of a distillery going in there, and you can just imagine the impact that would have had on the village in terms of local jobs and everything. But then, of course, look at the world events took over, COVID hit, and the Ukrainian issue, and people welcomed the Ukrainians. There was no problem whatsoever with that. But as I said, the emphasis was always on it was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. And then, of course, IPAS started coming into Ireland, and very quickly the Ukrainians here were actually unceremoniously given their marching orders and told to make way. And look, it's the lure of easy money, and the whole thing is just, I just think it's in danger of ruining our country.
Yeah. How many? I just went in briefly around the site. There's a good few. There seem like holiday homes and stuff in there, so it'll be a fine site for tourism. You could have American tourists coming in and out, and it'd be a great boost to the local area. Where this is probably more of a drain on resources and limited resources.
With something like IPAS, there's a small fortune going in the gates of that every week, every month, every year, and there's no associated spend in the village. Whereas if you take it when the hotel was up and operating as a hotel, and really, you could go anywhere in Ireland and meet someone and they'd say, "Where are you from?" You'd say, "Oh, I live near Dundrum." Everyone has either known someone who got married here, they've been to a wedding themselves. It's a very, very well-known premises. And I'd say there's hardly a youngster in the village going back over the years that didn't put themselves through college with part-time jobs there. And when there were weddings and functions, again, casual labour brought in to wait tables and all of that. And all of that is gone now. When the new contract was announced, there'd be a minimum of 2 people on site. Where's the associated spend? When people were here on holidays, they were going into the village to have a pint in Bertie's. They were going in, maybe getting their hair done in the hairdressers. If they needed kind of bits and pieces that you need, the hardware shop was there. So it's been a terrible loss to the area. And even in terms of a gathering point, every funeral, communion, confirmation, they're all celebrated inside in the hotel, and then in its turn in the venue. And there is a narrative out there at the moment that, well, it hasn't operated as a hotel since 2015. Now, while there was a fire in the ballroom, the current operator, he acquired the property, and of course the ownership is been challenged in the High Court. He acquired the property with plans to redevelop it. This is what he said. So he knew kind of what he was getting involved in. But in actual fact, while the loss of the ballroom had a huge impact on weddings, functions, etc. As you said yourself, there's an awful lot of accommodation in there that isn't attached to the manor house itself. And when the Ukrainian contract was signed, in actual fact, we had staff members tell us that they had to phone and cancel golf groups and groups that were coming to stay in the chalets there. So there's no reason whatsoever why couldn't, and even now still operate as holiday accommodation. And look at, I understand business. I know business have to make money and have to stay afloat, but there's huge potential here.
It's a huge site, isn't it? How many acres is it on? Someone said it's hundreds of acres.
It is. I think it's 200 and something acres now. I don't know the exact
well, I just
amount.
talking to some locals here as well. They were concerned that, if this goes ahead, this profiteer, this American profiteer, like all of this I've seen from Clonmel and other places, like all of this could be switched over
Covered in modular homes.
To modular, and I wouldn't even call them modular homes. They're like little Porto cabins.
That's right.
We've seen them in Naas, we've seen them in Clonmel.
That's right.
And that is a massive fear, because this place is huge, and this is profit driven, because from what we had heard in the beginning was that that was going to be like a distillery there, and maybe a visitor centre, and that was the condition that I heard the winnings in the US had invested the money in. Now that's all through the courts at the moment, so we'll say that's alleged, but at the moment so it's fairly obvious why the locals would be very concerned, because as you can see all over the country, they could literally, this guy will get a whiff of more money, and the whole thing could be converted into, like you said, modular homes all over, and there'd be no golf course, they know nothing here.
As I have said, and I've been kind of a bit more vocal about it recently, where is there more money to be made? Is there more money to be made in housing iPass and maybe filling all of those acres with those sheds or modular homes, or running a golf course?
And they can do it without planning permission. This is another caveat.
Yes, they can, but of course the local Dundrum Heritage Group, because the manor house is a protected structure, they were granted leave to seek a judicial review into all of the planning decisions made by Tipperary County Council, and of course they granted a Section 5, which, the operator here recently got a warning letter from Tipperary County Council outlining 6 unauthorised developments on the site, including the driving range, I think the ball net or posts or whatever catch the ball to the driving range.
No planning permission.
No planning permission. The driving range car park. There are some internal roads there down by Kilmore Cottages, the houses at the back. None of those have planning permission. And interestingly, in the warning letter as well, it also talks about a roof structure over the site of the ballroom, and but also a roof over a bedroom 300, and I can't think of the 31 whatever the bedroom number is, and in actual fact that bedroom is included in the structure that the Heritage Group are fighting for, saying that this is a protected building and it should never have been interfered with. So we would kind of argue that by Tipperary County Council issuing the warning letter, they have in effect proven the Heritage Group's case that it should never have been granted Section 5 in the first place.
Look, there's so much going to come out with this, and even
absolutely.
this guy, what's his name, Leo? What's his first name?
Jeff Leo.
There's so much even coming out about him. I've some contacts in the States, and they said he potentially or allegedly could be wanted over there for fraud and all sorts of things.
Well, look at me, what we do know, and I only speak facts, and that's the one thing from day one I said here, if we're speaking about this, we need to speak facts and only facts. And facts don't care about our feelings. We all have feelings about what's going on, but the facts of the matter is that he was disbarred by, I can't think, the US Regulatory Authority, whatever, FIM something, I don't know. Listen, I'm just an ordinary mother. I'm not a legal expert, but my God, we've had the education of a lifetime here, I can tell you. But so he is disbarred from trading on the US Stock Exchange. What does that tell us? And if the Wennings allegations are upheld in the High Court, and the hearing is next Tuesday and Wednesday, then it's very clear that he's continuing to operate in a fashion in which he operated in America.
So he has a track record. So on that, well, look, I've been following this for a long time, and there's been incidents, say, at some of these sites all around the country, some violent incidents, public order incidents, this, that and the other. City West, for example, there was riots and stuff up there. I heard of an incident here where someone might have passed away. Do you have any information on what happened that night?
Do you know what? The information on that is very, very sketchy, because it was all kept very, very quiet. But a man did lose his life in there, and it was, as I understand it, an altercation between two the BOTP, the beneficiaries of temporary protection that were in there under the Ukrainian contract. I'm not sure. They were both two different nationalities, but there is stuff that I know about that I'm not really. I need to protect myself.
That did happen. Someone passed away.
Absolutely,
so
that happened.
It's not even in here a week, and you've already got these incidents.
But the other thing I would say just on that, and I've said this again several times. I have 4 sons. I'm a mother of 4 sons, and my sons, look, they love each other like brothers love each other, which means they kill each other lots of the time too. But if I were to put my 4 sons into a confined space, fenced in, nothing to do, no money to speak of, they'd kill each other. Give them an hour and I'd have to pull them asunder, So on a humanitarian level, if you were to come at this purely from a humanitarian side, how can you just put people in here? And in actual fact, when the very first IPAs arrived in here, the women that went in, they were pleading for help. They said the houses they were put into were filthy, weren't fit for purpose. There were children. They were to open up the upper windows, and in actual fact, some of our people here were the ones to help them, told them how to access healthcare, because they were literally dumped in there. Where were the NGOs? The NGOs were on air calling us racist, while we were here on the ground helping the people who were in there, you know. And for me, it just sickens me, this narrative that's out there the whole time, that this is not, to me, for me, this is not a race issue. For me, this is a culture issue. And how can you put 270, and there's a bed capacity in there of 540 actually.
God,
So, but how can you, and he offered more, but he was told no, 270 is plenty. So how can you put 270 people into a crossroads in the middle of, unless they're all really enthusiastic golfers, what are they going to do all day?
100%. And we went in and we tipped into the village in there, into Dundrum. Like, this is a quite isolated area.
It is.
So like, realistically, if you don't have your own transport, like, is there buses? Even if you were to get into the village, there's not a whole lot to do in there.
No, there really isn't.
Like, you are very isolated. Do they even have public transport to bring them in?
There is now. A bus will collect there in the mornings and over that side there, and it'll take people into Cashel or into Tipperary town. But again, if you've got piles of people getting on a bus to head into Cashel or into Tipperary town, what are they supposed to do when they get there? Like, you know, I remember when we were youngsters, my parents never wanted us out around the streets kicking cans, as she used to say, around the streets.
Well,
like,
my grandmother said the devil makes work for idle hands.
That is so true. That is so true, you know. So it's, you know, the whole thing is just completely wrong. And the other thing too is, I really do think that I would love at the end of this if there was an inquiry into the behaviour of the national media and the elected representatives, because they have allowed a narrative whereby we ordinary people are racist. Now, my husband will tell you I'm the biggest bleeding heart. I fall for every sob story. It's like those people arriving here and we were the ones helping them, you know.
Well, the media is meant to be the watchdog of the establishment, and now it seems to be the lapdog.
They are the spokesperson. But they've allowed a narrative whereby ordinary people like us are being called racist. And what they've done actually is they've made people afraid to put their head above the parapet and say, I don't agree with what's going on, because not everyone is able for some of the abuse that we've had to endure.
That's the whole idea of it.
Absolutely.
It's labelling and everything else. Like, a lot of people were labelled, and I've spoken whatever else, they were saying that, you know, these people aren't fleeing war, they're coming from safe countries, that they are not seeking protection, that they're actually economic migrants, and people were vilified, they were called racist, they were called far right, called Nazi, X, Y and Z. And then lo and behold, our teacher Micheál Martin comes out less than 2 months ago and says, oh well, actually lads, they are actually predominantly economic migrants. So there's another box open there as to why are taxpayers paying for all this stuff? If they're economic migrants, we've had economic migrants, we had Polish, they came in, they rented their own houses.
That's right.
They paid their own electricity bills. Nobody paid their food. Nobody put engines in their cars.
In their car,
So like,
absolutely,
when you just go into it, from start to finish, it's completely unethical, in my opinion, anyway, what's going on right across the country. And you're not alone here. This is going on the length and breadth of the country.
And also how they say to us, you know, the powers that be, or the national media, how they say to us, you know, diversity is good for the country. I would like to say to them, how, in what way? Or migration is good for the country, you know, how, in what way? Because they will immediately go to our healthcare workers. Nobody concerned with this issue is talking about those people. That's not the issue. They're here, they're working, they're paying their taxes, they're contributing to society. They are welcome. We've no problem with that. That's why I keep saying this is not a race issue, this is a culture issue. And as you say, how many countries are they travelling to get to Ireland? And why are they doing that? Because the red carpet is rolled out. They were told in how many different languages by Radical government that they'd have their own lockable premises, etc., etc. They just can't do enough for them. And that would be fine if the country wasn't in crisis already. And in actual fact, this to me shows how simple this issue is. My 15-year-old son, my youngest boy, he was in school and they were in CSP or whichever that class is, and their teacher started talking about fake news. And he said, so I'll give you an example now of fake news. You'll hear people saying Ireland is full. He said, Ireland isn't full. So my son put up his hand and he went, sir. And the teacher said, well, Larkin. And he goes, well, sir, Ireland, per number of people in a square acre, might not be full. But he said there's been a housing crisis and a health crisis in this country since before I was born.
Yep.
So in terms of services, he said Ireland is full.
Yep.
And his teachers actually said, because this had started here, he said, I might actually enjoy this class, Larkin.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Yeah.
So if a 15-year-old can understand
But why
that.
is this coming up in classes as well? You see, this is I have a problem with the state in this regard as well. You know, can we have education, not indoctrination? Can we keep it to the core subjects and stop remove the critical theory and all the gender-based nonsense, all of that?
100%.
No business has that been in the schools. We had that in the colleges, which is actually producing a lot of these activists, journalists, activists, presenters, all this stuff. We've had that for too long now. That seems to be permeating downwards into the secondary schools and all the way through.
Yeah. And in fact, that same boy actually, he's a member of the student council in Cashel, and he was brought out one day. All the students, they were all brought out, and they were raising flags. And one of the flags they raised was a pride flag. And Larkin said, "Miss, what's the story with the pride flag?" And she said, "Well, look," she said, "it's about inclusion." And he said, "Surely the best way to foster inclusion is to just include people.
Yeah.
Like, why are you giving people a separate flag? Surely that makes them different. If the whole thing is about inclusion." He said, "Miss, nobody cares.
It's politicizing it.
Nobody cares." He said, "People are just what they are. Nobody cares." You know. But I was actually asked as well. I was talking to somebody. They said, "What's with all the Irish flags?"
Yeah, because we're Irish.
And I said, "Okay, that's fine. People are flying Ukrainian flags, pride flags, Palestinian flags.
Oh yeah.
Why has it to be a thing of shame to fly our gorgeous Irish flag?" You know, and I'm so proud every time I pass here and come here to see those flags there. You know, but look at, you know, I think we've shown as a people how resolute we are. The Irish people are finally beginning to rise up, to begin to find their voice, and the more of us that speak, the less and less people are afraid to speak and say what they want to say. You know, and it's heartening actually to see that.
It was great last week at the protest in Dublin. There was probably plus over 50,000 Patriots marched in Dublin for these issues, and numbers are growing all the time. So the narrative, you know, is changing, and people are waking up, and that's I suppose that's the government's going to have to start taking on board.
And I am actually heartened by what I hear from people that I talk to. We have, from day one, we have resolutely laid the blame for this squarely at the door of government. Nobody is targeting people who are coming in.
Correct.
Listen, if someone was to offer me a ball of money in a free house, I'm 100% going to take that. No one is blaming those people.
Exactly.
The problem, as far as I'm concerned, lies at the heart of government. But where you have politicians, and there are plenty of them with properties
and cronies
that are earning an absolute fortune from iPass, it's like asking turkeys to vote for Christmas, asking them to just do something about this
100%,
issue.
yeah, the Healy raised down the country.
Absolutely.
I think they're touching nearly €1 million in profit from the Ukrainian thing. And then it came out during the week with Nick Delahunty. We're not sure the guys. Was it Jeff or something? He's fairly,
the vice president of Fianna Fáil.
Yes.
Yep. I couldn't believe
he's got a 20 million contract.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know,
to my mind, sorry to cut across here. To my mind, I think any politician, any elected representative in the Dáil or elected representative who has skin in this game, financial skin in this game, conflict of interest, and they should not be allowed to have any say in it. They shouldn't be allowed to vote yes or no, because we know they're going to vote yes to keep it. So to me, it's an absolute conflict of interest, and I would actually like to know. I think somebody somewhere has a lot of dirt.
I think it's all going to come out again. Like this is legalised human trafficking
100%.
and racketeering, profiteering, cronyism, and it goes right up to the top of the government as we discovered during the week. And you know, it just goes on and on. You've got Banty McInerney. He's over 150 million between him and his family already made. You know, and so
sure. Look at the guy who he actually was an asylum seeker himself, living in Mallow, wasn't it?
The Indian dude.
And he gets a contract to run an iPad centre.
While he owes the revenue 120,000.
Make it make sense. So who's taking? And while I'm asking who was making decisions here, I would like to know. 2 weeks ago, we were given and it was devastating, the news that there was a 2-year contract had been signed. We've heard since then it was 3 years for iPass here, and that there was a 20-year lease. And I'm sure you've covered all that Spanish shenanigans. And we know now it's a shell corporation. In actual fact, his solicitors acknolidged that. They said
that's the girl's name. Is it Fernanda?
That's her
Sanchez?
name. Yeah.
And does she even exist? Is that a real person, or do we know?
I don't know. But one of our ladies is very creative. She had that up that evening. And to be honest with you, the plastic shovels children bring to the beach. One of those, all you need to do is dig with one of those, and we uncovered that the registered address of it, whatever, is a rundown apartment in Spain. The whole thing is an absolute sham. But the Department of Integration were still able to say that all the criteria had been met. I'd love to know who made that decision, considering that while they were saying that, and while they were issuing contracts and okaying 20-year leases with this sham corporation, Tipperary County Council were drafting their warning letter outlining 6 unauthorised developments on the site here in Dundrum House Hotel. So this whole thing stinks to high heaven, and I cannot wait for it to be uncovered. And please God, on next week in the High Court, justice will prevail.
In Dundrum, the fight continues for community, for identity, and for a future that balances compassion with local needs. Only time will tell what this village becomes. The locals have maintained a 24/7 protest outside Dundrum House. They're not just fighting for a building, they're fighting for the soul of their village.